On behalf of the Social Justice Studies program, I want to welcome you all to Roosevelt University, and it's a pleasure to be hosting this body in this event. My name's Eric Gelman. I'm a historian here, and my students this semester have been learning about historical and philosophical ideas and movements concerning social justice. So it's a real pleasure to host this event because several of the people in this room are making history in your own struggle for economic justice and dignity in the workplace. And a few of my students are here attending this event, and it's an honor for them to be here and for them to witness this. Now I'd like to introduce to you one of the key people from Arise Chicago, Reverend C.J. Hawking, who has been at the forefront of all of these struggles for social and economic justice. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Hawking.
Thank you, and good morning. Welcome to all of you, and we want to be sure to thank you for coming on this historic day. As I was preparing for today, I went back to see what else happened on October 7th through history, and some of it relates to what we're doing here today. On October 7th of 1913, the Ford Company instituted an assembly line structure to manufacture cars, creating new workplace conditions that we would live with for the next 101 years. In 1944, on October 7th, there was an uprising at the Auschwitz concentration camp where Jews burned down the crematoriums. And so we are here in that spirit of working for justice. There are a few fun facts. American Bandstand got started in 1957. And in 1960, the second debate between JFK and Nixon. And a little fun fact, 1975 on this date, the US decides not to deport John Lennon back to the UK for his pot conviction. So we have come a long way. And then just one other historical date that happened on October 7th, 1991, and it certainly relates to what we're talking about here today. Law professor Anita Hill accuses Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas of making sexually inappropriate remarks to her. So that's just a very quick walk through history. Perhaps in the days and years to come, they will point back to October 7th, 2014, and say this is the event where Chicagoans gathered to discuss the moral imperative for earned sick days. Today, we want to have an important conversation about scheduling and benefits for hourly workers. Today, we want to share about the initiatives taking place at various levels of government pertaining to paid sick days and scheduling. Now, we all know that there are initiatives to increase the minimum wage at state and local levels, and these are steps certainly in the right direction. We are grateful to everyone in this room who is working on raising the minimum wage. But we also need to look beyond the horizon and see what's coming next and build on the momentum of the Raising the Minimum Wage campaign and continue collectively to lift up income inequality. So even if a higher minimum wage is won, we still have to hold employers accountable on many fronts. Employers must pay earned sick time. Employers must give consistent scheduling to their employees so that workers can make childcare arrangements, continue their education, and be able to schedule quality time with their families. And once again, once minimum wage and earned sick time are won, employers cannot minimize hours of their employees. Clearly, earned sick time is a moral imperative for our society. As many of you know, the Earned Sick Time Coalition filed an ordinance in City Council with the support of the majority of aldermen. And now the coalition is asking that this important issue be heard and debated. Even though Mayor Emanuel would support some version of paid sick days, and he wants to put it on the February ballot, we need to send a message that we will not rest until we have a comprehensive ordinance on the books, an ordinance that takes in the needs of working families and the realities of everyday lives, of their everyday lives. Today, we will hear from policy experts and researchers on why we need the initiatives for paid sick days. And we will hear from workers about how important it is to their lives that we together tackle these issues. Before introducing our very honored guest of Congressman Jan Schakowsky, I would like to acknowledge in the room State Representative Christian Mitchell, Democratic nominee for State Representative Will Guzzardi, Alderman Joe Moore, Alderman Will Burns, and last and certainly not least, Alderman Tony Folks. They will have a chance to ask questions and make responses after our presenters. To start us off, dear friends, we invite a longtime champion of working families, low-wage workers, and women. She is the best of the best in Washington, D.C. Representative Jan Schakowsky has been a lifelong consumer advocate and a champion for what she sees as the disappearing middle class. She was elected to represent Illinois' 9th Congressional District in 1998 after serving for 8 years in the Illinois General Assembly. She is in her 8th term, serving in the House Democratic leadership as Chief Deputy Whip and as a member of the Steering and Policy Committee. Representative Schakowsky is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, where she is the ranking Democrat on the Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade Subcommittee. And as a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, she is the ranking Democrat on the Oversight Committee. Jan, on behalf of this entire room and all of your district and all of Illinois, we thank you for your support on minimum wage, earned sick time, and fair scheduling. Ladies and gentlemen, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Down. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you, CJ. I really want to thank all the organizations that helped put this together. I think I've worked with every one. There's only one I don't recognize the logo. It's got a fork and a knife. What is that?
Rock.
Right, okay. Sorry. I was out on the street with Arise and with Teamsters Local 705 last Friday in front of Golan Movers, where the workers voted for a contract, and it has not been recognized. They're guilty of wage theft and really mistreating their mostly immigrant workers. I've been at press conferences with our Walmart group, where one of the speakers was a worker at Walmart in California. He pulled up his sleeve to show the marks on his arm. He said, "I'm not a drug addict. These marks are from the blood that I give in order to get more money to put food on the table for my family." Women employed, for years we've been fighting for the rights of women in the workplace. And UFCW, I want to thank you so much. I see Ron Powell, who is here in this audience, who also for decades and has been fighting for the rights of workers. And I really want to thank you. What's happening on the streets right now is going to change what's happening in Washington, in Chicago, and in the state of Illinois. It's the most important activity that we're doing right now. In Washington, we're doing basically nothing. On the streets, we're doing everything that's important, that's going to make change. One of the things I want to say, this is the last official day to register to vote. If you really want to make a difference, you register to vote. You can do it on your cell phone. You can do it online. So please, today is the day. How many people can register to vote today? Let me see your hands. I want to do it. Do it. Okay. I want to tell you a story. I know we're going to hear stories today. Thank you for the workers who are here to tell these stories. Saw a school bus driver who said that when she stops at a corner, sees a mother crying and putting her child on the bus, she knows that child is sick, but the mom has made a choice. I either lose a day's pay and maybe can't feed my child or pay the rent, or I send her to school sick. And she says it happens all too often. And that is the choice that workers are making. That's the choice a woman in Chicago made during the snowstorm last year. And she did not send her child. She had no place to send her child. She made all the calls she could, stayed home, and when she went back to work, she found she had no job. Child with autism. This is the anxiety that I know that many workers have today, and we can do something about it. So I am a co-sponsor of the Schedules That Work Act, and I want to tell you what it does. It protects all employees from retaliation for requesting a more flexible, predictable, or stable schedule. This is a bill, by the way, right now, H.R. 5159. It's in the Congress. George Miller, who sadly is leaving, is one of the great champions for workers. And it also says that employees who make a request to take a day's leave because they have caregiving duties, are dealing with a health condition, pursuing educational training courses, or need to meet the demands of a second job must be granted schedule change unless the employer has a bona fide business reason for denying it. So at least the request can be made and must be granted unless an excuse is given. Compensating retail, food service, and cleaning workers for at least 4 hours of work if an employee reports to work when scheduled for at least 4 hours but is sent home early. How often does that happen? Oh, whoops, the schedule changed, you can just go home. Now there's a cost to the employer for that. Providing that retail, food service, and cleaning employees receive work schedules at least 2 weeks in advance. And if the schedules change, then they have to pay. The employer has to pay for that. Providing workers an extra hour of pay if scheduled to work split shifts or non-consecutive shifts within a single day. So I said we have 42 co-sponsors. Our job is to get more co-sponsors. 218 is the magic number. That's when a bill has enough co-sponsors and supporters to pass the House of Representatives. But in the meantime, it's an organizing tool that we can work for. The Schedule That Works Act, what did I say? The number is, maybe you could shout it back to me. What?
The Schedules at Work?
Yeah.
2159.
5159? Okay, 5159. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, a couple other bills I want to tell you about. The HR 3712, the Medical and Family Leave Insurance Act, would establish a national paid family and medical leave insurance program. So many workers can't afford to take the non-paid, guaranteed sick leave. And so, you know, we want to have it paid, as most other industrialized countries do. And the HR 1286, the Healthy Families Act, allow workers to earn up to 7 paid sick days per year. This paid sick day would be used to recover from short-term illness, care for a sick family member, seek routine care, seek assistance related to domestic violence. We also have the Paycheck Fairness Act that would make it easier to enforce equal pay for equal work. But I want to say to my sisters, if you want equal pay for equal work, join a union. And I've never seen a contract that says that women will be paid less. So, and I want to acknowledge Katie Jordan from the Coalition for Labor Union Women, which I'm also a proud member of. So thank you, Katie. And let me just end with this. The women of the Democratic women of the House, led by Nancy Pelosi, have engaged in a campaign called "When Women Succeed, America Succeeds." Try that. When women succeed,
America succeeds.
oh, better than that. When women succeed, America succeeds. Come on. And that's not just a slogan, it's just a reality. Because it is not just about women, it's about families. When women do better, American families do better. And so part of our agenda is paycheck fairness, increasing the minimum wage, because 60% or more of minimum wage workers, and by the way, that tip wage, which is mostly women, is $2.13 an hour. It hasn't been raised for 22 years. That is absolutely unacceptable. It includes paid sick leave, paid family and medical leave, and it includes affordable, high-quality child care. We absolutely have to make the child tax credit permanent and index it to inflation. You know, there was a recent study by the Shriver Report, it's called, Maria Shriver, that 1/3 of American women are either living in poverty or on the brink. This is at a time when America has never been richer. My brothers and sisters, these are winnable fights. We're starting to win them now. We need to be organizing. I know you are. I'm going to be with you every step of the way. We have to get bolder and tougher. We need to speak out, and when we do, we can make the change that we dream of, that we organize for in Washington, D.C. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We are so proud to call you a sister in the struggle. Truly, truly we are. Today we will have 2 panels. The first panel will be researchers and experts on earned sick time. And then later, the second panel will be of workers, telling us that we really need to tackle this earned sick time ordinance. Our first panelist is Ms. Melissa Josephs. She is the Director of Equal Opportunity Policy at Women Employed, where she conducts research, develops recommendations, directs advocacy campaigns, conducts federal and state level lobbying, and monitors implementation of policies on a range of employment issues, which include sick time, paid leave, pregnancy, sexual harassment, fair wages, and enforcement of equal opportunity laws. She has authored several studies, including Raising Women's Pay, an Agenda for Equity, Sexual Harassment, the Problem That Isn't Going Away, and Job Training as a Path Out of Poverty. Prior to joining Women Employed in 1990, Melissa was a community organizer. She is also a graduate of Kent College of Law. Melissa, please come and discuss the city and state legislation on sick time. Melissa Josephs.
Thank you very much. It is so exciting to be here, and thank you, Jan, for kicking us off. I mean, it was like a great, rousing start. It's very exciting to see everybody who's here, legislators and workers in particular, and I really look forward to hearing your stories. It's great that so many people care about this. Well, I'm mostly going to be talking about sick days, but all of these very important issues we need to make change. So in addition to working at Women Employed, I represent the Paid Leave Coalition for Chicago and Illinois. When we want to change the problems of low-wage work so that workers are fairly rewarded and treated with respect. We believe hardworking people deserve good jobs and the ability to afford the basics of life. And we need to provide workplace protections and ensure that all workers have paid sick days, paid family and medical leave, as well as a predictable schedule. Well, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the earned sick leave. We know that not every worker has sick days, particularly lower wage hourly workers. We also know that some employers that do provide sick days, that when you take the sick day, you get written up every time you take it, even if you give a ton of notice. That's just their policy. You get a disciplinary mark that could lead to retaliation up to and including being fired, as Jan talked about Rhiannon, who was fired from Whole Foods earlier this year. So if you worked somewhere like that, you wouldn't use the sick leave if you were going to be punished every time you used it. So that's a problem that obviously needs to be changed. And all of us are going to be sick at some point where we need to stay home either to take care of ourselves or to care for a family member. And without paid sick days, as Jan also pointed out, we have two basic choices. Either we come to work sick because we can't afford not to get paid, to pay for groceries and diapers and all of our expenses. And if that happens, we can infect other people, right? We can infect coworkers, customers, the public. So that's not an ideal situation, but people need to be paid. But if people feel like, no, I'm too sick, or I need to stay home and care for a family member, they do stay home, but that means that they don't get paid, and it's very possible, again, that not only are they retaliated against, or they could be fired. And that is so wrong that someone stays home, doesn't get paid, and could be fired just because they're sick. So obviously, this needs to change. Who are these workers we're talking about? 43% of private sector workers do not have paid sick time. Mostly, these are hourly workers, because mostly salaried workers get this. 80% of low-wage workers, like food service workers, childcare workers, healthcare workers, do not get sick days. And 90% of restaurant staff do not have sick days. So again, if they feel that they have to come to work and can't afford to stay home without getting paid, they could infect, the customers. So I'm going to talk briefly about laws that are being proposed at the city, state, and federal level. And one thing that they all have in common is that it's not like you get a day. It's not handed to you a day at a time. It's called earned sick leave because you earn it. On these different proposals, you earn an hour of sick leave either for every 30 hours you work or for every 40 hours you work. And so if you're working full-time, and let's say like in the, there's a fact sheet that people may have picked up in the folders, but also in the desk when you checked in, that talks about the city ordinance. And this outlines what I'm just going to talk about, which is the city ordinance would allow you to earn an hour of sick leave for every 30 hours you work. So if you're working 40 hours a week, it would take you 6 weeks to earn 1 8-hour day, or you can take it hourly, so it would be 40 hours. Anyhow, this ordinance covers full and part-time workers, and it covers your own illness or preventative care, or the same thing for a family member's illness, for domestic or sexual violence, or because of a business or school closing due to an emergency, like what happened earlier this year with the polar vortex. And as Jan said, at the federal level, the Healthy Families Act has been introduced that would provide up to 7 sick days. At the state level, so far, Connecticut and California are the 2 states that have sick days. Both of them are somewhat limited in that Connecticut only covers service workers. I love that service workers are covered, but everybody has to be covered. And California just passed a bill for 2 sick days a year, would exclude some people. There is a state proposal that was introduced earlier this year that would provide 2 sick days a year, would cover employers with 20 or more employees. One very good thing about this proposal is it would include job protection. So as we talked about, some employers give you sick days, but then they fire you for using them. That would not be allowed in a bill that provides job protection. And 13 cities have passed sick days laws, and we hope that Chicago is going to be the next one. And as we talked about, an ordinance was introduced that would provide between 5 and 9 sick days a year based on the size of the employer. So 5 days if it's 1 to 9, and if it's 10 or more employees, 9 sick days. And it would cover all the reasons that I'm talking about on this fact sheet for reasons for leave. And as Jessica from the Institute for Women's Policy Research will talk about, the cities that have passed sick days have not encountered what a lot of people who are opposed to it say is going to happen, which is businesses leave the city if they have to provide sick days and they start their business somewhere else. And in fact, job growth is higher in cities that have sick days than in surrounding areas that don't. And I'll leave that to her in a few minutes. The other 2 basic arguments we usually get against sick days from the big employer lobbyists, one is that it's too expensive. And again, Jessica's going to do a cost-benefit analysis. The thing about sick days is you have to earn them an hour at a time, and then you need to use them. So not everybody's going to use all the sick days that they earn. And in fact, there's a benefit in addition to the cost that the employers pay when you use them. The benefit is you're a more productive worker. You're not infecting other people. So the benefits actually outweigh the costs. And the second reason we get against passing something like this is a lot of employer lobbyist types don't like mandates. They don't want to be told what to do. They might say, well, we're already providing sick days. Yeah, but you might be disciplining people every time you use them. So we really need, the next minimum wage is sick days. There needs to be at least a minimum standard that everybody gets. So just like good employers are providing more than a minimum wage because they know it's the right thing to do. And it's the same, there's some employers that are providing good sick days because they know it's the right thing to do. But I see this as, the next minimum wage or, abolishing child labor and the Triangle Shirt Waste Factory that killed hundreds of women garment workers, and that led to improved safety. So we need all of that. Otherwise, it would be, if we didn't have those things, we'd have 10-year-old people working for mere pennies in dangerous conditions. And so things have to change. It just doesn't make sense to not allow someone to take a day off when they're sick. It costs so much more to replace them. I could go on, but I won't. Anyhow, and the other issue that I wanted to talk about is the paid family medical leave. And people probably know that for 20 years we've had the FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, which is unpaid leave for up to 12 weeks, serious illness, or for new parents. And that only covers employers who have 50 or more employees. And so that's something ideally that should change to make it apply to employers with smaller size employees, because for the unpaid FMLA, only 40% of people have access to it because they work for smaller employers. And most people can't afford to take an unpaid leave. Only 11% of workers have paid leave. So as Jan said, the Family Act was introduced that would provide this paid leave for employers of all size. So it wouldn't be any minimum number, and they'd get a portion of their wage when they take leave. And in Illinois, there was a paid leave bill introduced earlier this year as well, very similar. It's paid by very small employee contribution of about $1.50 a week that would lead to a portion of wages when a person needs leave. So I'm just going to wrap up by saying that I think it's time, to finally do the right thing for our workers and families, for employers, the economy, and everyone's health. And as Jan referenced earlier about let's not be the only, industrialized nation not to do it. I think the only other countries that don't have it, Jan, are Papua New Guinea and Swaziland. So let's not be like that, and let's really push for sick days and paid family medical leave. Thank you.
41 weeks. 41 weeks is the number of weeks that Norway gives to parents upon the birth of a child, paid. We have a long way to go. Our media guru up on the platform here, Alderman Will Burns, has created a hashtag for the event today. Hashtag earned sick days is something that you can use. I see a lot of young people here. Go make your friends smart about earned sick time. Next, we have Dr. Jessica Milley, who is a senior research associate at the Institute for Women's Policy Research. She works on a variety of topics, including the status of women in the states project, breastfeeding programs, and paid family leave. Her primary focus is to conduct research concerning paid sick leave, including the costs and the benefits. Jessica has taught courses in economic statistics, labor economics, and women in the global economy at 3 universities, and earned her PhD in economics from the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, where she also researched the link between the experience of domestic violence, being a welfare recipient, and employment status of women. Jessica is going to be doing a PowerPoint, so we'll probably ask our panelists if they would like to come back into the audience. And we welcome Jessica to discuss studies of the costs and benefits of paid sick days. Jessica.
Well, thank you for the wonderful introduction. I apologize, I need to get my PowerPoint up and running. I'm very excited to be here today to discuss IWPR's research on the impact of paid sick leave and how it would impact Chicago in particular. All right, so I have a lot of information to get through today. We actually put out 3 separate reports on paid sick days in Chicago. And so the first of those reports that I want to talk about is kind of a preliminary analysis of the Chicago area, trying to determine which workers would be impacted by legislation if it were to go through. So we asked the question, who has paid sick days and who doesn't? And so we put out a report earlier in 2014 in February, and this report found that in Chicago, about 42% of private sector workers do not have a single paid sick day at work, and this amounts to about 460,000 workers. So clearly a huge chunk of the workforce does not have this very important benefit. What's a little bit more interesting, though, is that access to this benefit is not uniform across the entire worker population. And we found some trends in our Chicago data, notably that access varies by gender and race, and it also varies substantially by worker incomes and occupations that workers are employed in. Now, we also do a variety of analyses on local levels and also at the national level, and some other things that we notice about worker access, not necessarily in Chicago because we didn't have the data available, but we also know that worker access to paid sick leave also varies by the number of hours worked, so full-time, part-time status. Part-time workers are far less likely to have the benefit than full-time workers. And we also know that access varies substantially by the size of the firm that employees are employed in, with smaller firms being far less likely to offer the benefit than larger firms. So going into a little bit more detail about access and how it varies across the worker population, we have breakdowns by gender and race and ethnicity. Now, I just want to point out that this is the percent of workers without access to paid sick days. And so we can see that when we compare men and women, for example, women are a little bit more likely than men to have access to this benefit, but that doesn't mean that legislation would not affect them as much as it would for men. In fact, we know that research has shown that women actually might be more impacted by legislation than men would be. So we know that paid sick days is one of the primary factors that determine whether parents choose to stay at home and care for a sick child, for example. And we also know that when parents do stay home to take care of a sick child, it is predominantly the mother that stays home with them. And so even though women might be more likely to have access than men, they're more likely to need access. We also see that there is a bit of a disparate impact by race. And so men and women of color are less likely than white men and women to have access to paid sick days. And you'll notice that Hispanic men and women are the least likely, with more than half of Hispanic workers not having access to this important benefit. What is perhaps more shocking, though, is that there is a wide gap in access by occupation. And so you'll notice at the top, again, we're dealing with the percent of workers that do not have access to paid sick leave. And so at the very top, we have food preparation and serving occupations. And so these workers who have below average access to this benefit are predominantly workers that have a lot of contact with the public. So again, food service workers, personal care workers, daycare workers. They all have very low levels of access to this benefit, which is really worrying because, again, they have frequent contact with the public. And so if they're forced to choose between going into work sick and getting a paycheck or staying at home and taking care of themselves, they're probably going to go into work and get that paycheck, but then they're going to infect their coworkers, and then they're going to infect their customers that they're interacting with as well. So again, a very disproportionate impact for those types of workers. Probably not surprising given what we know about access so far is that access also varies by income level, with lower income workers with under $20,000 a year having the least amount of access. 77% of low-wage workers do not have paid sick days, whereas workers that are in higher income groups, so $65,000 a year and above, only 20% of those workers lack access. So what does this say about the need for a paid sick days ordinance in Chicago? Well, we know that many of the characteristics that are associated with higher or lower access tend to overlap with one another. So for example, we saw that food service workers were the least likely to have access. They're also likely to be low-wage workers. They're also likely to be part-time workers, all of which are factors that prevent them from having that benefit. And so we find that these economically vulnerable workers are typically the least likely to have benefits, but they're also the most likely to benefit from this legislation because they're having to choose between going into work sick and earning a paycheck or staying at home and taking care of themselves but foregoing their wages. And research indicates that there are many benefits to having this legislation in place. So obviously there's a public health benefit, for example. And when we have 42% of workers not having access to this benefit, these benefits are going unrealized. We're not capturing all the benefits that we could have. And so now that we kind of know who would be the impacted population, we also want to know if we implemented this policy, what would be the costs associated with it, and how would they relate to the benefits that we're thinking are going to occur due to this legislation. And so our cost benefit analysis takes into account all of the different parameters of the proposed legislation. So we can take into account the waiting period for using benefits, any job tenure requirements. We can take into account the maximum number of days that workers can accrue. We can take into account firm size restrictions and any tiered benefits that the program stipulates. We can also take into account various uses of sick leave, so taking care of your children or other family members for domestic violence and so on. And then lastly, we can also take into account the fact that if workers already have paid leave programs in place, they can restructure those benefits to come into compliance with the new legislation. And so when we calculate our costs and benefits, there are a number of things that go into our analysis. One, obviously, we're calculating the cost of providing leave. So we combine information on the number of days workers will take, their wages, their hours worked, and we also include a multiplier for administrative costs, so costs of HR for keeping track of these benefits. We're also able to quantify a number of benefits to having sick leave policies in place, including increased productivity from workers, lower turnover, so workers are not going to be quitting jobs as much or losing jobs because they are taking time off when they're sick. We have reduced flu in the workplace, reduced norovirus outbreaks in nursing homes, and reduced emergency department visits. And these are just a small subset of all of the benefits that come with the paid sick days policy. And we're going to see in a minute that even when we only take into account a small subset of those benefits, that the benefits still outweigh the costs. So we have a lot of numbers to throw at you up here, and so I'm going to do my best to walk you through all of the numbers that are going on. Because we have two separate tiers for the accrual of paid sick days, we look at employees in firms that have 10 or fewer employees and 10 or more employees separately, because we think that behaviors of firms and employees in those firms are going to be different. And so we have the first two columns that estimate the costs and benefits of those different firm sizes separately. What we're really interested in is the total column on the far right. So when we calculate the costs of providing paid sick leave for employees, we think about how many days workers tend to use when they have access to paid sick days. Contrary to what firms will believe, workers do not take all of their sick days in a given year. On average, they only take about 2 paid sick days per year, and that includes for their own health, going to doctor visits, caring for sick children, and everything. So we take that into account. We take into account the occupation that the worker works in, wages that they earn, and the average number of hours worked per day. And we come up with a cost estimate of about $97 million. We can also take into account other uses of sick leave. So one of our assumptions is that if a worker has a new child, they will also use the remaining number of days that they have accrued to go towards their maternity leave. And so we've taken that into account as well. So overall, the bottom line cost estimate is about $110 million, which seems like a lot, but when you break it down, it really comes out to be about 22 cents an hour, which is not a lot. Well, employers don't have only costs that are associated with this worker benefit. They also get benefits themselves for having policies in place. And a couple of those benefits that we can quantify is the fact that workers are going to be more productive when they have access to this benefit. And the reason why that would be is that research has shown that when workers are able to stay at home and take care of their health, they recover more quickly from illness. So anyone who's gone into work when they're sick knows that they're not at 100%. And employers currently pay those workers for working 100% when they're not. And so when we have paid sick days policies in place, workers are able to recover more quickly and return to that 100% more quickly. So that amounts to about $7.6 million in cost savings. One of the biggest benefits to employers is reduced turnover from their employees. So workers value benefits like this because they are important for economic and family stability. And so when they have a benefit that is important to them, they're less likely to move to another employer that might have this benefit. And so when we take that into account, along with the cost involved in replacing workers, so taking out an ad in the local paper, HR time, reading through applications and such, this really amounts to a huge cost saving for employers to the tune of about $104 million. Lastly, we have public health benefits for those employers. If workers, again, are able to stay at home when they're sick, they're not going into work and infecting their coworkers, which again, when people are out sick, the employer might lose some money. And so we're cutting down on that as well. And so overall, the employer savings that we estimate are at about $116 million. So when we balance that with the cost, we actually get an employer cost savings of about $6 million. So here the benefits outweigh the cost for the employers. But we're not done yet. We also have other important community benefits. Okay, so we also have reduced norovirus outbreaks in nursing homes. Obviously, that's not the only place that these outbreaks can occur. So for any of you who don't know, norovirus is like the stomach flu. So that also happens at restaurants a lot, but it's a little bit easier to calculate in nursing homes where things are a little bit more contained. And so we're able to estimate, based on the number of employees who work at nursing homes, the number of residents in those nursing homes, the effect of having a paid sick days policy in those settings. And we know that, again, when workers have sick leave, they're able to stay at home when they're sick and they're not going into work infecting their coworkers and the residents that they work with. And so again, we have cost savings in medical costs of about $1 million. And lastly, we have reduced emergency department visits. So this is part of the cost benefit analysis. It's also part of a separate report that we released. If you have your packets in front of you, we have a separate document on emergency department cost savings. And so the idea behind this is that sick leave can also be used for medical visits. So you can go and see your doctor if you're not feeling well with paid sick days. And when workers don't have this sick leave, they're more likely to delay medical care and wait until after work hours to go see someone about the illness that they have. And so when they wait until after work hours, that might mean going in and seeing an emergency department doctor versus seeing their regular doctor, which is far more expensive. And so we estimate that about 22,000 emergency department visits could be prevented per year if we had a universal paid sick days policy. And so the cost savings associated with that are about $8 million. And that also saves some money for public health insurance spending. So this is taxpayer money that we're saving, to the tune of about $3 million. And so all told, we have a net benefit of this paid sick days policy of over $19 million. So clearly the benefits outweigh the costs here. All right, this had been our estimated impact of sick days legislation. We also want to talk about what has actually happened in the places that have implemented sick leave policies to get an idea of whether employer concerns were well-founded or not. And so this great infographic from Think Progress shows the momentum that some of our previous speakers have been talking about behind this paid sick leave idea. We started off in 2006 in San Francisco, being the first city to pass paid sick days legislation. Then we had Washington, D.C. a little bit later, And then we move all the way into 2014. This year, we've had so many paid sick days policies being passed around the country, including California state. So clearly there's a lot of momentum here. What's nice now, though, is that since a lot of time has passed since California, or San Francisco, California, has passed this legislation and other places have passed it, we're able to estimate the impact of these local laws on the business community. And so we really focus on the employer impact because that's where most of the opposition has come from. So we really want to see what really happened. And so a couple of studies have been done, one in San Francisco, another in Connecticut, another in Seattle, and one in DC as well. And so the overall results that we find is that the number of jobs available didn't go down, it actually increased in San Francisco and Seattle after their laws were enacted. Not only did they increased more than the surrounding areas that did not have paid sick leave legislation. Seattle businesses saw sales increase during the first 2 quarters after the law was passed. So business was good for these employers that were providing these benefits. One of our worries was that employers would leave the area if they were forced to provide sick leave benefits, or new employers would not locate in a location that had these mandates. But no evidence was found in DC that the law prompted businesses to leave the city or discouraged businesses from establishing a new business in the city. And in fact, employers in Connecticut identified several positive impacts of the paid sick days legislation, including what we had already thought in our cost-benefit analysis of improved employee productivity and morale, all good things for businesses. In terms of the costs of providing these sick leave policies, in Connecticut, most businesses found little to no impact on their business costs of providing this policy or this benefit. And about 2/3 of employers surveyed reporting having no increased costs or an increased cost of less than 2% as a result of the new law. Another concern was that when employers had to provide this benefit, they would make changes to their prices or employee hours and wages in order to compensate for this extra benefit. And a very small number of Connecticut employers actually did things like this. So they didn't have to respond in that negative manner. A report evaluating Seattle's experience found that the cost of providing leave was only about 0.4% of total revenue. So there's not a huge impact on the firm's bottom line. Okay, very minimal impact. And finally, we found that record keeping was very easy to implement, and only 1/3 of firms had trouble keeping track of worker benefits. And so just to sum up here, okay, we have estimated that there's going to be a net savings for the community and employers as a whole in Chicago. And we know based on previous experience in other localities that have provided paid sick leave that the overall impact on the business community is very small. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions after the forum.
Thank you so much, Dr. Milley. That was incredibly informative. As our panelists resume their seats up here, I would also like to acknowledge State Representative Lisa Hernandez, who's in the room. Lisa, thank you. And State Representative Dan Biss. Excuse me. Please forgive me. Okay, remember that hashtag earned sick days. Our final panelist in our panelist of experts is Laquita Honeysucker, who serves as the legislative representative in the Legislative and Political Action Department of the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union. She lobbies members of Congress on general labor issues, including minimum wage and paid sick days, as well as food safety and immigration. She served as a legislative counsel in the office of Congressman Bobby Scott. Ms. Honeysucker received her law degree from the University of Tennessee and is licensed to practice law in D.C. Laquita will discuss the status of federal legislation on the Schedules That Work Act. Laquita.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm very excited to be here today to talk about the Schedules at Work Act, and good to see you, Congresswoman, who actually did a great overview about the legislation. But today, too many Americans have little say on the job in general. While salaried workers often point to long hours and rigid schedules as a serious workplace problem, the flip side of that is our hourly workers face a totally different problem, and that's unpredictable and irregular work schedules in which they have very little input. If you ask a worker in the retail industry what improvements can be made on the job, almost always you get an answer involving scheduling. Fair, flexible, and reliable scheduling is a simple way to ensure that all workers are treated with dignity and respect that they deserve. A couple months ago, George Miller's staff called together a group of individuals that included women's groups, those of us in labor, as well as other congressional staff to try to come up with something to address this problem. The result of that is the Schedules That Work Act. And it helps families balance their responsibilities at work with their responsibilities at home while respecting the needs of the employers. The important part of this is that we did take into account the effect that it would have on businesses. There are a lot of great employers out there who want to address this problem and work with their employees. But we do have some bad actors, and later on I'll kind of give you guys examples across the broad spectrum with that. So what will this legislation accomplish? H.R. 5159 is the House bill, and it's the Schedules at Work Act, and it provides relief to workers facing irregular and unpredictable schedules. It accomplishes this in 4 ways: protecting all employees from retaliation for requesting more flexible, predictable, or stable schedules. Stories that we heard were that people felt comfortable requesting scheduling changes, but they often found themselves retaliated against by getting their hours cut, and eventually a lot of them had to seek out other employment. It creates a process for employers to consider requests that is responsive to the needs of both the employers and the employees. So employees who make requests because they have a caregiving need, they need to deal with their own health condition or that of a family member, or they're pursuing education or training courses, or they need to meet the needs of a second job, they must be granted a schedule change unless there's a good reason for denying it. The next thing that it does is that it compensates retail, food service, and cleaning workers for at least 4 hours of work if an employee reports to work when scheduled for at least 4 hours but is sent home early. It provides retail, food service, and janitorial employees their schedule at least 2 weeks in advance. Though schedules may later be changed, 1 hour's worth of work pay is required when the schedule is changed with less than 24 hours notice. And last, it provides workers with an extra hour of pay if they're scheduled to work split shifts or non-consecutive shifts within a single day. An example of this is you go into work, you work for a couple of hours, and then you just have to hang out and kind of be on call, and you come back in and work a set number of hours later. So why is this important to our industry? So I, of course, am partial as the member and worker with the United Food and Commercial Workers to the retail industry. And the reason why I found this was really important and why I was very happy that we had a seat at the table is because it puts undue pressure on our good employers. We have a lot of good employers who give a lot of advance notice. I say it's a broad spectrum. On one end, we represent both retail and food processing. So on the retail end, we represent Macy's and Bloomingdale's. Macy's provides about 2 to 3 weeks of advance notice of scheduling. And when I reviewed the contracts, 3 of our 5 contracts require that the associate is paid in full for the hours scheduled if there's no work available for them. And one of the contracts specifically says that the reporting pay is the greater of the hours scheduled and 4 hours. So this is very important in an industry where it's a lot for people to pay for transportation to get to work, arrange childcare, only to arrive at work and have someone say, by the way, sorry, I couldn't get in touch with you, but we don't have anything for you. The middle of the road is kind of one of the new companies that we've been working with, H&M. Here in the States, you get 2 weeks notice of your schedule. But if you want to contrast that with H&M in Sweden, you get 1 year notice of your schedule. So just an interesting fact there. So we put them kind of in the middle. And then on the very end, of course, is our good friends over at Walmart. So one of the next important reasons why we need this legislation is it's one thing to say that you have a stated policy, and there's another thing to have legislation with real repercussions and penalties if you violate workers' rights. So I want to just highlight 2 things when talking about Walmart. So they have a stated policy regarding scheduling, and its schedules are supposed to be posted 3 weeks in advance, and each worker is supposed to see the current week's schedule as well as the schedule for the next 2 weeks. What we found in practice is that schedules are often late and managers can change worker schedules at the last minute, and regularly they do. We actually had a story from one of the ladies who said that in her store, a worker had 40 hours on her schedule, and when she checked later the very same day, she had 5 hours cut. And unless you have printed proof of the old schedule, managers can deny that the old schedule existed or any changes have been made at all, or just dodge the question altogether. The next area that they've been touting a new policy is with open availability. And what open availability means is that you have to have pretty much an on-call schedule. That means if we call you and tell you that we need you to work today, then you should have already arranged for for childcare. And that may mean that you made arrangements for childcare, but you don't get called that day. So their policy that they started back in 2007 was that our associates are not required to have open availability or to be on call. But in practice, we found that in order to have and maintain full-time status, associates must have open availability, meaning they will accept whatever schedule Walmart provides them. And Walmart gives the most shifts to workers who have open availability. Individuals who do not indicate that they have open availability when applying for employment are often screened out. Managers often refuse to approve workers' availability forms in order to eliminate scheduling restrictions. A good example of this is a lot of college students who've been trying to work at Walmart while going to school. Courtney Moore is an associate in Cincinnati, and she said that she had been assigned about 40 hours a week until she told the store manager that she'd be taking college classes, mostly in the mornings and some afternoons. And she asked her manager to put her on the late shift, but to her dismay, the store reduced her hours to only 15 hours a week. So you'll see how this law is very much needed, and we need to have something with teeth where you can have some kind of enforcement. There are currently 42 co-sponsors in the House, and including Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who is an original co-sponsor, along with Robin Kelly and Danny Davis in this area. So you guys are covered with your Congress people here. But we only have 5 sponsors in the Senate. So when I spoke to George Miller and his staff most recently, he encouraged everyone to use the gridlock in Congress and turn it in your favor. It's easy for a lot of people to get dismayed with the process. On the news, you see how they're so divided in Congress, and don't get me wrong, it is. We're there fighting, and it is very divided, but they still have to listen to you. So please go in, and you have to localize the issue. Share your stories and make it personal for them. So Congress rarely initiates, but it almost always responds. So don't let the dysfunction of Congress make you think that you can't do anything. So the Schedules at Work Act gives employers a voice at work, and it benefits both business and families. Businesses can incur significant costs as a result of unpredictable scheduling for their employees, such as high work turnover and absenteeism. Empowering workers with schedule flexibility and certainty can minimize those effects. So again, it's something that gives both the employer and the employee some sense of certainty, and they're better able to plan both their home life and their work life. And it gives more quality time to spend with loved ones. So if I can make a plug again, please make it personal. Contact your Congress people and let them know that this is an important issue and legislation that you believe in and that is much needed for workers across America. Thank you.
Great. Great. Thank you, Laquita. Very informative. So as we wrap up our first panel of experts, we're going to give about 10 minutes of discussion with our elected leaders. A note about the microphone. The microphone on the table is connected to the TV, CAN TV, but there is no microphone on the table, so we're asking you to really project your voices out in your questions and in your answers, and then if we can also pass the TV mic, that will be very helpful for our good friends at CAN TV. And so we turn to our elected officials and ask you if you have any questions, concerns, any discussion that you would want to have.
Why don't you go first?
Why don't I go first? The ladies go first, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the amazing thing when I'm on a panel as a legislator, I always go back to my grassroots organizing. And I guess I would like to say to the employees out there, first I would agree with Congresswoman, is that you need to organize and you need to be in a union. Most of you know I'm a member of UFCW and I worked for Jules for 19 years. And one thing that I always did, I never asked, I always told. So I didn't go in asking for, can I have a day off? I need this day off, and whatever time I needed off, because I had that safety net, and I never had that problem. And that's most important. And I just believe that you need to, I know you need to organize, because it's so unfair, the things that are going on in the workplace. And I'm here to fight, because I've been there, and I know what it's like. And before being alderman, I always wondered, I went to college, got a degree, and I was like, how did I end up in Jules? How did I end up in the bake shop? And I know why, because I had to walk in you all's shoes. And I understand. And I'm proud of my background. I'm proud of where I am, because I'm a larger voice for you all, and it keeps me grounded. So to all the employees, go back, encourage your fellow employees to take part of these actions and get on the bandwagon to make it better for working people, because I know it's hard out there.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Will Burns. I'm the alderman of the 4th Ward here in the city of Chicago. And just apologies, I have an 11:30 out in the neighborhood that I have to get to, so I'm going to probably leave in about 15 minutes. Can everyone hear me okay?
No,
Can everyone hear me now?
they're here, you in the TV.
No, that's for the TV, but they can't. Right. All right, so my name's Will Burns. I'm the alderman of the 4th Ward here in the city of Chicago. I have an 11:25 back out in the neighborhood, but I wanted to be here because I believe this is a really important piece in terms of reducing poverty and inequality here in the city of Chicago and in the United States. I want to say thank you to Congressman Schakowsky for her leadership on these issues, but quite frankly, all the change is going to come from states and from cities. If you look at what's happening with the minimum wage, whether it's Seattle or Chicago or New York or states, San Jose, Washington, D.C., it's happening at the local level because, quite frankly, the Republican Party, the Tea Party extremists, have blocked legislation that in years previous, moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats, liberals could all agree on was important to move our country forward. You know things are bad when the International Monetary Fund says that the United States has a problem with income inequality. This is no longer an issue of the left wing. It is an issue for all of us. And so, you know, even Republicans who have statewide or national aspirations are talking about the fact that there has to be an agenda in the United States to deal with income inequality and poverty. Now, if you're a working woman, a working person, and you can't get 2 sick days off a year, I'm not talking 2 sick days a month, 2 sick days a year, paid, where you can go and take care of somebody in your family, when you can go and take care of yourself because you're ill, what does that say about us as a country? What does that say about us and our values as a city and as a state? And what I can tell you, my friends, my brothers and sisters, is that there's something very positive happening in cities and states around the country. Where people are recognizing, the establishment understands that it has to make accommodations for working people. And so now's the time. And I believe that whether it's this year or next year, we're going to have paid earned sick time in the city of Chicago. Thank you for your hard work. Keep pushing.
Thank you, Alderman folks, Alderman Burns. I'm Alderman Joe Moore of the 49th Ward. And before I go any further, I want to recognize an icon, my hero, Tim Black, who joined us here today. Tim. He's been there with a lot of struggles for a long time and has seen a lot of progress, but also knows how much further we have to go. I'm very proud to... And a graduate of Roosevelt University, our host today. I'm proud to join Alderman folks and Alderman Burns in support of the paid sick leave legislation in the city of Chicago. Later on today, at the Rules Committee meeting, City Council Committee on Rules at 1 o'clock, we'll be considering an advisory referendum that'll put this question to the people. It's a great organizing tool for those who support paid sick leave, and there will be, assuming the Committee on Rules passes it and is approved by the full City Council tomorrow, which I anticipate it will be, it'll put the measure on the ballot and let every voter in the February municipal election vote on this question about whether the City of Chicago should enact paid sick leave legislation. I believe it will pass, and will pass very overwhelmingly. But it's only an advisory referendum. Ultimately, it's up to those of us in the City Council to do the right thing. As Will so eloquently stated, the movement for change, for progressive change, is not coming from Washington anymore, unfortunately, despite the great efforts of my heroine, Jan Schakowsky, my congresswoman. It's coming from cities. It's coming from municipalities. It's coming from New York and from LA and from Chicago and from San Francisco. In the great cities of this country, that's where the change is coming. And Chicago will be, I believe, the next city that will be included on a list, together with all the cities that were shown in our presentation, to be in the forefront for paid sick leave, just as under Will Burns' leadership, we're soon to be in the forefront of enacting our own minimum wage to ensure that low-wage workers have a decent opportunity at achieving the American dream. And so I stand here together with my brothers and sisters in UFCW, Marina Foss-Hupert, Ron Powell, and all the great people that I've been working shoulder to shoulder with all these years as we continue the battle for fairness, as we continue the battle for justice, as we continue the battle to make sure that every worker in this city and in this country has dignity and has respect and can achieve something better for their families. So thanks for having me here today. I learned a lot, and I hope we get a copy of your presentation with all of the research you've done and the citations of the research, because one thing we've heard from time and time again, every time from the very beginning, whether it's ending child labor or a 40-hour week or a minimum wage, is we hear from folks in business and industry that it's going to drive us out of the country. We're going to, it's going to cost consumers tremendous amounts of money. We're going to have to lay off people. It's going to cost jobs. Time and time again, they've been proven wrong, and yet those same arguments keep being raised. It's good to have the facts at our disposal when we're out there making the arguments and telling the truth to the people. So thank you.
Okay. I know I've had my chance, but just one short comment. Elections really matter, and the issue of the minimum wage is literally on the ballot right now as an advisory referendum. Enough reason to make sure you register and make sure you vote, and you can vote by mail. You do not have to go anywhere except, get a ballot and you can vote by mail. And in the governor's race, this is a key issue on the minimum wage. Our governor, Pat Quinn, is a full supporter. He helped to get that referendum on the ballot. And while his opponent is now saying he supports raising the minimum wage, the caveat, only if there's changes for business. But in the past, he is on record of saying that he is, quote, over and over, adamantly opposed to raising the minimum wage, and on some occasion has talked about eliminating or lowering the minimum wage. The choice is absolutely clear. Who is on the side of ordinary workers and who is not? And so please consider this. We have most of the drop-off voters in off-year elections are Democrats, and most of them are single women, young people, and people of color. So that's our target audience, to make sure everybody finishes registering. And by the way, there are some days and ways that if someone misses today, that they can, even up until Election Day, register and vote. But we want as many people today. And those are the people we need to talk to. Get those ballots, get somehow, either in the mail or in person, to vote. I'm pleading with you. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. As we dismiss our first panelists and invite up Charmaine, Victor, Martina, and Daniel to take their seats up front, I especially wanted to thank our aldermen, our state reps, our state senators, our U.S. Congresswomen. It is so refreshing to have you come and inspire us, and we're relieved that we don't have to now move to Norway or Sweden. So, our first speaker is Charmaine Givens-Thomas, who is a Walmart associate and member of our Walmart. Let us welcome Charmaine.
Thank you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me here. I would like to thank all elected officials, clergy, researchers, community allies, labor union, and other organizations that have joined us today for this important discussion on income equality. My name is Charmaine Givens-Thomas, and I work at Evergreen Park Walmart for over 9 years. I am a member of organizer organization United for Respect at Walmart, our Walmart, an organization of current and former Walmart associates working together to make Walmart a better place to work. I am a mother, a grandmother. Like all other Walmart associates, we work hard every day to make the company profitable. But our hard work and dedication, Walmart heirs have accumulated over $144 billion in fortune. The question is, what about us, the workers? As a full-time associate, I can easily say that it's been a long time since I worked 40 hours a week. I am averaging 32 hours a week and always wondering, how can I pay my bills? In addition to lack of hours, it is unpredictable schedules and often make it harder for parents and non-parents alike to make important planning, and I have seen my schedule change from one week to another and unable to plan things with my family. Many in this room have heard about the low wages that Walmart pays us. But what many do not know is the toll that it takes on a family and how it affects a whole community. The impact of income equality is beyond measure to me because I live it every day. Even in the darkest moments of my life, I am left wondering, can I pay my bills? How can I avoid getting my gas or electricity cut off? Do I need to eat, or do I need to buy a bus fare to be able to make it to work? Worse, I could find myself spending $3 that I have left in my pocket on lunch and don't know how to get home. Do I walk? Who can I borrow money from, because we are all broke, meaning associates? These are the realities of working at Walmart. Not only am I stressed out, but I am left ashamed. And I work for the biggest retailer in the country, but cannot give 40 hours a week. Cannot, most of the time, definitely make a family plan because of my schedule. Moreover, if you are sick at Walmart and you are not a regular full-time associate, you will not be qualified for illness pay protection policy. But I am hopeful that a change is possible. I am hopeful that elected officials will do the right thing by holding Walmart accountable. More importantly, I am hoping that all of us, Walmart associates and community alike, will rise and make Walmart a better place to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. It's indeed inspiring to be a part of a movement with you as our leader, and so I thank you.
She should never be ashamed.
And she should never be ashamed. There's an oxymoron in our country, the working poor. If you are working, you should not be poor. We have come to accept that as a term in our narrative in our country, and it is just dead wrong. And so, Charmaine, we are proud of you, proud that you are standing up for what is right, for yourself, for your grandchildren, for your coworkers. So thank you. Next, we have a worker who also has some fight in him. Victor Guzman is a McDonald's worker, and with Fight for 15. Victor. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Victor, and I'm a student, and I'm a worker. I work at McDonald's, Clark and Lake. If anyone pass by there, I'll be there. And yeah, so I want to talk about the issue that we don't have like schedules. They ask us to go to work when they want, then when they need us, and we don't have pay of sick days pay. They don't pay the sick when we are sick, and they don't pay us when we cannot come to work. So, oh my God, I'm nervous. But I have to say it because that's why I'm right here. So, like, in my case, when I'm sick, I have to push myself and I have to go to work because I have to pay my bills and no one is gonna pay it for me. And also I gotta pay my school because I live by myself. And I'm happy for that because I'm very responsible and I'm getting an education. And yeah, so what I'm saying is that it is not right that these companies, they are earning billions of dollars and they don't want to pay to their workers the days when they need to, they cannot work. So I'm right here representing workers from McDonald's and from fast food workers like McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, and Subway, because there's a lot of college students, and like me, we got this struggle that they don't want to pay us a living wage. So, thank you. And we're gonna be fighting because we need a union. We need a union because they don't wanna pay us what we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. Really, you're inspiring us all. Next, I'd like to call upon an Arise Chicago worker member, Martina Sanchez, who has worked at car washes. Martina. Welcome.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Martina Sánchez y yo soy miembro del Centro de Trabajadores de Arise Chicago.
Good morning. My name is Martina Sanchez, and I'm a member of Arise Chicago Workers Center.
Yo llegué a Arise Chicago porque estaba enfrentando muchos abusos y violaciones laborales en mi sitio de trabajo.
I arrived at Arise Chicago because I was suffering from many abuses and labor violations in my work site.
Uno de los abusos que me gustaría compartir con ustedes hoy
One of the abuses that I suffered that I'd like to share with you all today
es de tener que ir a trabajar enfermos.
is that I had to go to work sick.
Desafortunadamente, miles de trabajadores en el estado de Illinois tenemos que ir a trabajar enfermos por miedo a perder nuestros trabajos.
Unfortunately, thousands of workers in the state of Illinois have to go to work sick out of fear of losing our jobs.
Mi esposo y yo fuimos algunos de ellos.
My husband and myself are two of the many.
Una vez cuando estábamos en el trabajo, mi esposo sintió un dolor muy fuerte y tuvimos que llevarlo de emergencia al hospital.
One day while we were at work, my husband suffered from a very sharp pain, and we had to rush him to the hospital.
Los doctores descubrieron que tenía que ser operado de emergencia, pues la vesícula estaba a punto de reventarse.
The doctors discovered that they had to do an emergency surgery on his gallbladder because it was about to rupture.
Estuvo hospitalizado y adquirimos una deuda de miles de dólares.
He was hospitalized, and we had to pay back thousands of dollars in hospital debt.
A la semana de recibir esta cirugía, tuvo que regresar a trabajar aún con los puntos.
The very same week that he had the surgery, he had to return to work, even though he still had stitches in.
Pues las deudas no paraban y no contábamos con seguro de salud o días de enfermedad.
Unfortunately, the medical bills don't stop, and we don't have paid sick days or health insurance.
Él tuvo que regresar a hacer el trabajo normal por miedo a perder su trabajo.
So he had to return to do the very same work out of fear of losing his job.
El dueño insistentemente preguntaba si íbamos a regresar. Por ese motivo, mis hijos de 14, 16 y 18 años tuvieron que cubrir nuestro trabajo.
During the time that he was ill. Our manager, our owner, kept insisting, when were we coming back to work? When are we coming back to work? So we had to send our 3 kids, ages 14, 16, and 18, to cover for us in our place and hold our work.
Miles de trabajadores en Illinois son obligados a trabajar enfermos.
Thousands of workers in Illinois are obligated or forced to go to work sick.
Y tenemos que usar los fondos del gobierno por no tener seguro de salud ni días de enfermedad.
We're forced to rely on state funds because we don't have access to health care or paid sick days.
Estoy aquí hoy para hacer saber que tener días de enfermedad pagados no debe de ser una opción.
So I'm here today to tell you that you should know that having sick days is not an option for workers. It's a right.
Sino un derecho.
A right.
Un trabajador no debería de escoger entre salud y no perder su trabajo.
No worker should ever be forced to choose between your health and losing your job.
Necesitamos su ayuda.
We need your help.
Los invito a que visiten nuestra página de Facebook, the Rise Chicago Workers Center.
We invite you to visit Arise Chicago Worker Center on Facebook to follow this campaign and how you can support earned sick times. And once we hope it is on the ballot, we encourage you to vote in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Martina, thank you so much for sharing your story. As someone who also had gallbladder surgery, I know I needed the full 5 or 6 weeks to recover, and it is unthinkable that someone was expected back at work in that first week. Completely unthinkable and immoral. Our last worker speaker is Daniel Vasquez. He is a bartender at Irish Bar and a member of Restaurant Opportunities Center. Daniel.
Hello everyone, my name is Daniel. I'm a member of ROC and I'm currently bar backing and bartending at Mahoney's Bar and Grill. About 5 months ago I worked at the Rocking Horse, which is a gastropub in Logan Square. I woke up one day with the chills and I had a cold sweat. I'd never really taken off a day of work, so I called in and asked them if I could stay home at work. At the time I just moved into my first place, saving up for school. And they say, well, you got to find someone to fill in, or you just have to come in. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, this is a restaurant. This is where people put things in their mouth. They're eating food. And if you have the line cooks and the prep cooks, you have the bartenders or waitresses handling food with the potential to contaminate it. It's a public, it's a safety hazard for everyone involved. Well, anyways, I ended up losing my job. The next day I go into the kitchen and everyone's behaving very standoffishly. And I go up to the head chef and he says, yeah, you got to talk to boss. So I turn around and he's right behind me and he does one of these, like, no, you got to go. I'm like, okay, well, thanks for having me. I'm sorry I got sick. So I ended up going home, had to look for jobs, and unfortunately every other cooking job you're going to find in the city, they'll cut you short 8 hours so they don't pay you the benefits or the full-time hours that you need. They'll keep you at 32, they'll keep you at less than 30, so that you don't really have much of a bargaining right to ask for health benefits, for paid sick days, for vacation time, for time to take care of your kids. In 2012, I worked for a labor union organizing campaign under SEIU, and I was designated the project of working the Dunkin' Donuts campaign, and I was speaking to workers who had burnt their hands on busted coffee mugs, coffee pots that burnt over their hands. They're coming to work with second-degree burns of blisters on their hands. God forbid a blister pops in your cappuccino first thing in the morning, and then these people are coming to work sick. They're coming to work in pain, and they're not getting any kind of medical leave, any kind of medical compensation. So. This is definitely something that needs attention and requires like the immediate action of local representatives and legislators so that when you do get sick at work or out of work, you don't bring that to work. It doesn't spread outside of work or from your home. No. So, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Very significant story. We have a few moments to have questions and answers, discussion from the audience. When you raise your hand and are called on, we ask you to speak up loudly so that the entire room can hear you. And we'll bring you the mic as well. So this gentleman, please wait 1 minute while we get you the mic. You can stand up.
Thank you. My name is Kyle Hedlund. I am also from Rock, Chicago, and this is a question for everyone. Do you guys think that it's not only a social issue and a cultural issue, but could the fact that we don't have paid sick time can also be a career growth issue as well as an economic issue? What is you guys' opinion on that kind of view on the issue?
One of the speakers earlier showed us the PowerPoint concerning employee morale and productivity. I think the facts are pretty straightforward in demonstrating that when you give your employee the time to take their day off, it gives them the idea, or it shows them that you care about them, you care about their health and their safety, and you want them to continue to come to work. I think it's an economic issue in the sense that employers think that it costs them a lot of money, when the chart showed earlier that it doesn't. It saves them money. It gives employees hope, morale, and productivity overall throughout their career. And I think it prompts employees to stick around. It prompts them to consider what they're doing in their job as something they can consider as a career full-time.
Por supuesto que afecta la economía.
Of course, it affects the economy.
Carolyn, can you speak up, please?
Sure, of course it affects the economy.
Yo tengo una hija
I have a daughter
que se graduó de high school con solamente A.
I had a daughter who graduated from high school with a 4.0 GPA.
Entonces, cuando yo me veo obligada a ir a trabajar estando enferma, porque necesito ese dinero para que ella continúe seguir estudiando.
So when I had to return to work, even though I was sick, so I could pay my bills so she could continue to study.
Si yo no recibo ese dinero por estar enferma, mi hija seguramente perderá sus estudios.
If I am not able to earn my money because I'm sick, she's going to lose her ability to study.
Yo tengo que ir a trabajar estando enferma.
I have to go to work when I'm sick.
Porque yo creo en su futuro de mi hija y de todos mis hijos.
Because I believe in the future of my daughter and all of my children.
Si mi hija o cualquier joven no se prepara y no estudia,
if my daughter or any young person doesn't prepare or study,
el futuro de este país
the future of this country
definitivamente estará en problemas.
Definitely will have problems.
Nosotros como adultos
we as adults
tenemos que proveer la economía o el dinero para que nuestros jóvenes se preparen.
¿Qué es proveer?
Tener.
Provide. Thank you. We have to provide for our children, and we need to, as adults, continue to work to grow the economy for the whole country.
Yes, Jessica would like to add some of the research. Let's have you come up here, Jessica. Thank you.
Just want to echo some of the comments that some of our workers have been saying, and back it up with some of the research that we know is out there. One of the things that we have looked at in our cost-benefit analysis is the effect on employee turnover. So when we have paid sick days, workers are less likely to either lose their jobs because they're taking time off to take care of themselves when they're sick, or they're choosing not to leave their employers because they feel like they're being taken care of. And so when workers are able to stay at their employers longer, they're able to build up their careers more quickly instead of having to go from job to job and really just start at square one. So in terms of a career path argument there's definitely something there. In terms of it being an economic problem, I also want to echo some of the comments on students and their ability to get an education. We talked about how workers were able to recover more quickly from illness when they're able to stay at home when they're sick. The same is true for children. And so when children are able to stay at home when they have illness, so their parents are staying at home and taking care of them, they also recover more quickly. And you guys know that when you were in school, you weren't feeling very well, you weren't able to concentrate as well as you would hope. And so again, the research shows that student outcomes tend to be better when their parents are able to stay at home and take care of them when they're ill. So again, it's an economic issue there because when students or children do better in school, that's a huge benefit for the economy.
Great, thank you.
Want me to stay up here?
Yeah, I want to say something. That I think that it is a economic and career issue because in my case, I don't want to be a manager at McDonald's because I don't have benefits, and if I take the position of manager, I'm gonna get more responsibilities, and still I won't be able to have like 6 days pay, and I mean, I don't think that's fair. So I don't think that more people, more students or anyone is gonna are gonna like to have that position. So like I think this is a career issue. That's my reason.
We have time for one more very quick question. Yes, Mr. Black.
Get the mic, Tim. Thank you. I'm very pleased and impressed to see all of you young people, and what has been commented is all of our future.
That's right.
I just happen to be 95, but much of my future is involved in what happens in terms of work, labor, in terms of safety and many other things. And I just recommend to all of us that we go to our own communities as much as we can and find organizations in the community as much as possible, and I particularly focus on the religious leadership who have a personal vested interest, economic and political, in retaining their institutions. That's a good starting place, as well as schools and other places where organizations. I have to leave now because I have another meeting to go to, but I certainly am pleased and encouraged because I see the wisdom and the dedication of these young people here and all through the room. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so very much. That is an excellent segue into our call to action. Before doing that, I do want to thank Professor Eric Gelman for helping us to host today, to our panelists, to our elected officials, to the workers who have shared with us from a very deep place that they are human beings that deserve to be treated with the dignity that they have inherent to who they are. And we admire your courage to fight and to lead all of us as together we work for paid sick days and many other workplace issues. And so the call to action, we have several action steps for you to engage in. We ask you to call your alderman and ask your alderman to support the paid sick days ordinance. We ask you to call Mayor Rahm Emanuel to call the ordinance for a hearing and for a vote. We ask you to sign the paid sick days pledge card, which is on the registration table. We invite you to like us on Facebook. We invite you to join the coalition for Earned Sick Time. We invite you to call your member of Congress to co-sponsor the federal bill that Jan spoke about so eloquently, schedules that work. Friends, this is just the beginning. We're going to keep that conversation moving. We're going to look to these young people to lead us, to create a more just society, to create safer and healthier workplaces, and to create a world where God's justice has a fuller measure. So this is just the beginning. Thank you all for coming. Your presence is inspiring. Let us go forward and create a better day in Chicago. Thank you.